Hello and welcome to this video on how to make my Excel document look less like Excel. Now, don't get me wrong, I am an Excel geek and I truly love Excel. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the way Excel looks. However, there are some occasions where we might want it to look a little bit less like Excel. So for example, it might be that you want your document to look more like a presentation. Or maybe you want it to look more like an app. Or maybe you've got a customer who doesn't really know Excel very much. So you really want to make it as clean and as simplified as it can be so that they get a better user experience. And this is something I get asked all the time. So I've decided to create a video on it. And I've also got a little handout that talks you through 15 tips and ways that you can do this. So I have been asked this question by a client in the past. So I have gone back into the document that I created to them and I've anonymized it and taken all of their relevant information out so that I can share it with you today in the view that I want it to sort of give you an idea of what is actually possible, because there's lots and lots of ways that you can stop an Excel document looking like an Excel document. So let's jump in and have a look. Now, on this occasion, the customer wanted to go to their customers and ask them and try and illustrate how much money they could save by getting rid of competitors' products and stocking more of their products. So that's kind of the theme for this document, just as a bit of a heads up. Let's go and have a look. So now you can see the document. I hope you feel it doesn't look particularly like Excel. It might even be a Word document or a presentation. Lots of the normal Excel features are gone. We don't even have ribbons at the top. We haven't got the formula bar. There aren't any grid lines. And so these are all the things I'm going to talk you through today. So first things first is, what about the ribbons? Well, they're not gone forever. If you go to the very top, there's these little 3 dots and they're called ellipses. And if you click the ellipses, they pop back up. And actually, you can then go to any ribbon and click this down arrow. Now, we were in full screen mode. That's how we'd achieved that little sneak. But what you can do is click just to show the tabs. Or if you click on any tab, you then have the option to always show the ribbon, and that is Excel's default view. So you can always show the ribbon here. But if you've got a client or you're sending this to somebody that isn't going to do anything in your document other than look at it, they don't really need all of that, do they? So it can just remove some of the clutter just to hide that. If we then move on to the next thing, you will see I've got no grid lines. And that's because I want it to appear clean. And actually, this is something I do in most Excel documents. If I've got a summary page that has got like a dashboard or charts and graphs on it, I will actually remove the grid lines because I don't want it to detract from what the charts are saying. I just want to make everything look a little bit cleaner and simpler. So how you do that is you go over to the view button and then you go to grid lines and you can click them on and you can click them off. So that's a really nice, simple one. You will then see we don't have any headings. My letters of the alphabet have disappeared and so have my numbers. And in exactly the same place, you can just click them on and off. Now, you will also notice there's a button here that you can toggle on your formula bar. Again, if you are sending your document to someone who doesn't need to know the formulas, doesn't need to see them and isn't going to change them, you can remove the formula bar. It doesn't need to be there. But we'll put it back on just to illustrate it. So those 3 are all held within the View tab, which is fabulous. Right, if we then carry on looking, you will see that I've given this a solid background. Now, this one happens to be white, but some other of my tabs in this document are blue and pink, etc. So what that means is you can just change the feel of it. It doesn't have to have a white background. The way you would do that is by clicking on this button and simply selecting to change the whole colour scheme. And that can then be tailored to your individual needs. One of the ways I think you can really stand your Excel document out is by adding a logo. So what you would do is add your relevant logo, your school, your college, your customer's logo to your computer. and you then go to simply insert picture, we would pick that we want to put it over the cells. We don't want it to sit within a cell. It would be very, very tiny. And then you would go to your device and you'd select wherever the folder is that you'd saved your logo to. What that then means is you don't very often see logos in Excel. So straight away, it gives you a point of difference, and it does make this feel more like a letter or more like a presentation. Of course, once you've got your logo, you can then use it as a color theme for the rest of your palette. And that's exactly what I've done here. And we're going to look at the other tabs in a moment, and they work in exactly the same way. So I have pulled out the blue from my logo. I've obviously pulled out the dark red color, the burgundy color here. And you'll see on my other tabs, I'm also using the light pink color. Why would I use a boring gray header that does look very Excel-like when I can color code it and make it appropriate to my specific color theme, the logo that I'm using? It just helps make it stand out a bit more. If we then look to some color blocks, I'm using this one here, and you'll see I do it in other tabs as well. I have just, in exactly the same way as I used that, I have highlighted this area and made it one specific color. It just makes it jump off the page. It makes it look a little bit more like a PowerPoint presentation. And I've used that same thing within my text. So none of my wording is black. It's all this dark purple. You could have wording that was blue, so on and so forth. And again, you use this just by working out what your logo colors are, and then using them in the same way that you would do for background color, using them for text. Now, there's a few different ways on how you can extract your logo colors. They're all explained in the PDF, so I'm not going to go through that with you now. But once you've got them and you've got your hex numbers, your palette, it's then a 2-second job. So that's really, really simple to do. Once you've done that, obviously you will increase your row heights so that you've got smaller rows where you need them, bigger rows where you need them, wider columns when you need them, so on and so forth. So again, that just helps everything look more spaced out, so that it's not all that standard height, 12.75, 15 if you use 15, that it's got that separation and it's got a little bit more space where you want there to be space. So that's really important as well. One of the things I do on a lot of my documents, but particularly on this occasion, I will lock my sheet areas. So I will actually specify what ones I want the customer to be able to use and what ones I don't. And once you've done that and you've taken that extra security measure on and off, it then, again, it stops it feeling like an Excel document, because other people can't just click on things and change things. It won't allow them to do it. So this tab is locked, I think. Let's go up here, and if we check it and I right click and go to Format Cells, at the end we have protection, and you can see this whole sheet is locked. There's nothing that anyone should be able to do here. This is just information purposes. One thing we might want to do is get rid of our tabs. Now you will notice I've got no tabs, but I can promise you there are more tabs. And that's when you can set up navigation buttons. Navigations are really, really clever. And the benefit is it gives you the opportunity to get rid of the tabs on the bottom and make this feel more like an app type of experience. So let's click on one of these navigation buttons now. And if I come to Input Parameters and click on here, it takes me to the other tab, which is far more like an app, isn't it? And you can see on this tab, I've used background colors. I've done some block coding here. I've actually also incorporated a drop-down box. And this is something which is great for people who don't use Excel very often. So that can be a nice function as well. And if we look at my other boxes, if we go to the illustrative savings, this would basically be the output page. There would be a chart here that explained to people how much they're going to have made in comparison to their competitors' products. And again, this doesn't really feel like Excel. It looks more like a product dashboard, doesn't it? And if I go to company information, We can see here I've got a QR code, which again is very modern. And there's nothing that would make this feel like an Excel document. So if I go back to here, how do we make these navigation buttons? Well, it's really, really simple. You simply go to insert a shape, and I've picked this box, but it doesn't need to be. Okay, so we've got our shape there now. And in here, if I right click, I can edit the text. And I'm going to put click here to go to page Z. There we go. And of course, you can color code these just the way you normally would. You've got your fill, so you would pick your specific color, and you can change the font type, size in exactly the same way that you normally would. What you then do is you link it. So this at the moment is just a shape, but in order to make it a navigation button, we now insert and we come over to link. So here it says, and I don't know if you've not used hyperlinks before, but they're fabulous. But here I'm going to say a place in this document. So it says, where do you want it to link to? And then you simply put the part that you want to create your link for. So obviously here I linked it to illustrative savings. Here I've linked it to company information. That then gives you your navigation buttons, which is incredible. From here, what you can do is hide your tabs because you don't need them anymore. So how you do that, let me show you, because it's exactly the same way to toggle it on and toggle it off. So I'm going to put it back on for you. So if you go to File and you go to Options and then you go to Advanced. Now, if you scroll, it's quite a far way down. You're going to get display options for this workbook, and it tells you the workbook that you're working on. Now you can see here we have options to get rid of the scroll bars and also to show or hide the sheet tabs. So if we now click that one up, you can see that they've jumped back into my document. So it might be that using navigation buttons is a step too far for you and you do want to keep your tabs in. That's absolutely fine. One tip I would then say is colour your tabs to make them relevant. How you do that is you simply right click and you put tab colour and you get your normal box. You've got more colours here where you could put in your specific company hex number that links to your logo, your colour theme, so on and so forth. The last thing I really want to talk about today that I think does make this look slightly different and slightly better is making your items and your boxes appear 3D. So if we go back to here, we can see that this box has actually got a shadow around it, as has this one, as have these ones. And I do think it just looks a bit more professional. So if we go to here, you do that by shape effects. And here you would pick your shadow. Now it's got this shadow in it. And if I select no shadow, it goes back to just being 2D. So I think that by clicking on that, it really does illustrate the difference that it makes. So I'm going to put my shadow back on just so you can see. And if we then think about this button, this is 2D. It looks very flat. It doesn't look overly professional. And it certainly looks a bit like Excel. If you then compare it to this button, it does just feel a little bit less like Excel. So how you would do that is exactly the same way. You come here, you go to shape format and you go to shape effects. And of course we can give it a shadow. That's the first thing we can do. And already it looks a little nicer. In fact, what I'll do is I'll copy it so we can see the before and after. So on here, let's just remove the shadow. Okay, so that's our flat 2D. Let's see what a difference it can make. We've added a shadow. Now, the other thing I think looks good with buttons is adding bevels. And you can do all sorts of bevels. Now, as I hover over them, it changes the one on the screen that we've got selected. So you can see the type of difference that it's going to make. Lots of different options there. You just pick whichever one you think works for you. But I hope you can now see that having this button in comparison to this button really does make a difference to the overall feel of your document. And you can see that I've kept that consistent throughout. We've used the same button types and colours. We've used making the boxes 3D and adding a shadow throughout all of them. I hope that's been helpful, and I hope it's given you some ideas that should you not want your Excel document to look like Excel, there are actually loads of options available to you. Have fun with it and enjoy getting your creative side out to accompany your geek. Thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next video.